Okay, so I woke up today to actual meta-defining patch notes. These are significant changes to the classes that we were seeing topping the meters on PTR, as well as underperforming. This will change the meta. So let's go over them simply first, and if you want to stick around as always, I'll go over the in-depth explanation afterwards. First and foremost, Unholy got buffed. It didn't need it, but okay. Sand Lane got buffed. It needed it. Frost, all ability damage reduced by 12%. This was necessary. It was way overperforming, so we'll see how that goes. Guardian Druid buff. Effectiveness of Star Surge cast by this set increased to 160%. This is a joke. Hilarious. I'm laughing. Balanced Druid, absolutely nuked out of existence. This is a significant nerf. Feral Druid, slight buff. Okay, doesn't really matter. Devastation, good little buff here, except not really. Okay, Scale Commander, yes. Preservation Evoker, this is an actual buff. It is very small, but it is nice. Preservation Evoker needed this. Dark Ranger, Bleak Powder, no, that's fine. All damage dealt reduced by 3%. Beast Mastery, all damage dealt reduced by 10%. Marksmanship Hunter, they both needed this. Beastmaster was still good. They will probably still be good. No problem, Hunter, you are fine. Mages, this is my best note. I just got to go over this real fast. Many mage tier bonuses were substantially overtuned despite mage's general average performance. Mage's general average performance is the greatest joke of this entire list. Come on, guys. Mage's generally average performance. Okay. These were all fair nerfs. I was reading this. I was like, yay, 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 well balanced. And then I read all ability damage increased by 3%. And I was like, wait, what? So, okay. Frost was the underperforming mage spec. All ability damage increased by 10% here. This is actually fair. Fire could have used this. Arcane did not need this. All right, moving on. Monks, rest in peace. Your buff got reverted. Fair enough. Actually, overall good for the game, to be honest. We'll talk about that later. Lightsmith, Prot Pally. Hilarious. This was Omega nerfed. This right there. That change right there, Omega nerf. Rest in peace, Prot Pally. Every time they give you something, they take it away. Retribution Paladin, massive buffs. All across the board, massive buffs to Retribution Paladin, and especially single target buffs. These are significant, and we will talk about them later. Priest, Voidweaver Discipline, a little bit of a nerf. That's fine. Okay, I'll talk about the really interesting thing there afterwards. Let's keep going. Shadow Priest, slight nerf. It's fine. This is not like the most, it's a little bit. I mean, this 4-piece nerf, it was significant. I want to see it on PTR, see how it performs. Rogue buffs. Huge buffs to Assassination. The best spec on PTR right now for rogues. So this is a massive buff. Outlaw damage, all ability increase. Subtlety damage, not all ability increased. I don't know what happened to Subtlety. Rest in peace, Subtlety. But Outlaw, Assassination, huge buffs here. And Enhancement Shaman, a nerf. Didn't need this, to be honest. It was not overperforming. Warlock, huge changes. Big, big, big buffs to Warlock. Absolutely insane buffs to Warlock. Honestly, all 3 specs of Warlock got kind of awesome, except for Demo. Demo got a slight nerf, which is fine because Demo was actually doing a lot of damage. But the other 2 Warlock specs, these are massive buffs. I'll go over them in a second. Keep going. Warrior, Arms. What is this? I'm sorry. I'm shooketh. Are you shooketh? DPS warriors got buffed on a patch. These are notes for DPS warriors. Look, Arms got 1 note. Blade Storm damage increased by 15%. What do you know? Fury, Blade Storm damage increased by 15%. Whirlwind damage increased by 10%. Now, the only actual buff to Fury is this Improve Whirlwind right here. This one. This is the interesting thing. 65% instead of 55%. This is actually a buff to AoE. It does not change the target cap, the hard target cap part of this, but it is technically a buff. Not bad. They desperately needed this. Let's go over it real quick. Fury Warriors, if you don't know how they work, this is actually a pretty significant AoE buff for them. It is not enough, but it does technically bring them up a little bit. This is the thing that they can do to improve Fury Warriors' performance in M+, because they already do well in raid, in a single target raid build. So this, honestly, this value right here is what they can tune to buff Fury Warrior in an M+ situation compared to raid situation. I could see this actually going to 70%, and all of a sudden Fury Warrior is going to start really pumping on 5 targets. The issue is that there are still specs that do more on 5 targets than Fury Warrior, so good way to provide a warrior buff, potentially. This is not enough. This is not going to propel them up to like a crazy tier, but this is a good value change. This is nothing. Okay, moving on. The Warlock buffs, Demo, slight nerf, this is fine. Affliction. These are interesting. Both Soul Harvester and so everything got buffed. And the thing to understand is that this actually does a lot of damage. I mean, this Blackened Soul change I mean, this is a lot of damage here. And these are big values. I know that looks like 6% instead of 2%, 6%. These are giant damage increases. Especially, Destro also got buffed. I think Destro needed this damage buff more than Affliction from my PTR testing. Affliction has other problems. But this Diabolus change, this is a lot of value here. The main thing is when I was playing Demonology, I was playing Soul Harvester. So I was playing Soul Harvester here. This got buffed, and I'm just like, this is going to do a lot of damage. I mean, there's a world where these changes actually propel Warlock to a potential meta slot. Because Boomy got nerfed, Arcane Mage is still going to be very good, and all of a sudden, you're looking for another caster, potentially with a B-Res. So, very interesting Warlock changes. I could see a comp developing with Warlock in it. Because that's not all, though. Let's keep going. Because you thought that was interesting. A Warlock meta. We haven't had that since Shadowlands, when the game was very well balanced. Then you only brought one Destro Warlock to your keys instead of 3. Okay. Enhancement nerf. Honestly, this is not... It's actually a fair nerf, to be honest. It's not crazy. It's just something. And I don't think they really needed this. I actually think enhancement was fine. These are the crazy changes here. Assassination. These are large damage increases, but specifically... single target. A lot of this is single target here. I mean, it's Crimson Tempest damage reduced by 9% is kind of okay, because what Assassination needed was more single target. It didn't necessarily need more AoE, and I think this is fine. The way that they chose to buff this is fine. These values are not insane, but it was already doing okay. Like, this was a solid, potentially B A tier spec. I've been playing with some very good Assassination rogues, though, so maybe like an average Assassination rogue was still struggling a lot, but some of the ones I've played with are doing at least somewhat competitive damage. This buff will bring them into contention a little bit more. Outlaw, all damage increased by 10%, but Blade Fury now deals 45% of single target to 50%. That is a massive nerf. Blade Fury does a lot of Outlaw's damage. A lot of Outlaw's damage. This is actually a pretty substantial nerf. With all damage being increased by 10%, it looks like a buff. This is still a buff technically, but this 45% value, I'm not sure why they did this. Outlaw was not overperforming on PTR. Outlaw was underperforming on PTR, so I'm really not sure what the intended change behind this 5% nerf was. They could have left this just by being 10% and not had this change in here. Outlaw still wouldn't be an S tier spec, so I'm kind of curious about this. Okay, Shadow Priest. This one's actually interesting. As I read this again, this is a large nerf to their 4 set. And one of the reasons that Shadow Priest was an S tier, potentially meta contending spec, was because this 4-piece was something like 40% DPS. Like, this 4-piece was such an crazy amount of damage that this is a lot of nerf here, right? This is 60% from 200% is a lot, yeah? And this is a 10% nerf to the Entropic Rift as well. Okay. I don't know what the math here actually is, but this set did need to get nerfed. So I don't know what the actual nerf here was, okay? The Discipline Preserve was only for Void Weaver. And as I read this change again, I will clarify. The 2 set got nerfed by 10%. The 4 set actually got buffed. Void Weaver is in an interesting place where most Disc Priests want to play Void Weaver because it's more fun to do damage and keys and heal through Atonement this way. However, you will notice there is a specific thing missing from this, which is that Oracle Priest has not been touched. Oracle's still dominant. If you can play Oracle, you play Oracle. Like, this is the thing with these patch notes, is they're not touching the 2 specs, because there's another spec that's missing from these patch notes. You're probably still playing Oracle. No matter how much they buff this, even if the damage is cool, you as a healer being able to do the Oracle things that Oracle can do, let's be honest, Disc Priest, you're playing Oracle. Okay, Retribution Paladin, massive buffs. Retribution Paladin, after their last bug fix, this was bugged for a long time. So now, I'm kind of curious, okay? I'm kind of curious, because the only nerf here is this right here, this value, but these are kind of large buffs. I'm very curious to see if this will propel Ret to a potentially at least A tier spec, because Prop Paladin right above this, giga nerfed, and Holy Paladin is not in a fantastic spot right now. So if you want Devo Aura, and Ret Pally has a lot of utility for keys, it's pretty solid. I think you could play Ret Pally. Like, this is good buffs to it because it was underperforming slightly, but not that much. Like, it wasn't underperforming that much. after the recent bug fixes. So these are kind of large buffs. I want to play it. I will definitely play my Ret Peli on PTR the very next time that I log in, okay? I'm very curious about this, so I want to play Ret Peli and see what happens. Lightsmith Prop Peli, this is just, you're done. You're done. Every single time they keep nerfing Lightsmith Prop Peli. I don't know why. Like, what did they do to deserve this? But they were already going to wait one of like the worst tanks coming into the season. They got buffed. Okay, great. They got nerfed. Okay, fine. It was a fair nerf. They got nerfed again. It was like still kind of all right. Now they just keep hitting you, man. They just keep hitting you. Like, it's just unless this change right here means that it was using maybe this change means that it actually wasn't using the full value. Maybe it was using a lower value. This is one that I might have to test. Like, maybe this means that it does more damage, not less. I don't know, but this is a big change because that means you don't get 5 masterwork stacks nearly as fast. Among just not proccing this as much, and you were specking full crit so that you could proc hammer and anvil as much as possible. I don't know about this. I have to see if that means maybe it does more damage or less. Honestly, it needs a buff, not a nerf, because Prop Pally is already kind of in a rough spot. So with damage, actually survivability-wise, Lightsmith Prop Pally is doing great in these dungeons, but the damage is going to be a little low. So I played it yesterday after the bug fix, and it was doing fine. All right, monks, your Mystic Touch got reverted, so people won't want you anymore. But obviously, this is good for the state of the game. They should actually go the other way with group buffs and reduce them instead of buff them. It's one, at first it seems nice, but I agree with everybody's takes that I've ever heard that is like, yo, this is going to end up nerfing physical classes. They won't buff the Feral Druid or the Warrior because they're getting 8% instead of 5%. Honestly, this is fair, and I think that it shouldn't have been 8%. That was too much. So it affects keys, unfortunately. The raid part of this is fine. The key part of this it's just a straight 3% nerf in keys. So, sorry, monks. Brewmaster still looks good. Don't worry. Mistweaver still looks all right. Windwalker. Sorry, Windwalkers. Okay, Frost Mage. Frost Mage, all ability damage increased by 10%. This is fair, but remember, everything got nerfed, including the Frost Mage set. So I don't know what the math actually maths here. I know the Arcane set was really good, but this one here, 1 stack instead of 2, 25% instead of... I don't know what the actual value of this was. I need to see on PTR if this really affects it, but my thinking is that this Arcane versus this all damage increased by 3% is almost a net even. It's got to be within 1 or 2%. Arcane was already overperforming in sort of an S tier spec. This is not enough. So Arcane is actually one of the only S tier specs that continues to be very dominant. Okay, so when I update a tier list in a few days after I test PTR some more, I'm very curious to see if Arcane just remains one of the only best specializations at this point. Okay, that's it for Mage. I don't know the exact values of this, to be honest. I don't really play Mage. I don't want to do that to myself. I appreciate my sanity and my happiness. Okay, Hunter. All damage reduced by 10% from Marksman is borderline not enough, especially because is this a buff or a nerf? Now correctly scales with Mastery. Mastery is quite a lot. That does a lot of damage. So does Bleak Powder, and this is a large part of your Dark Ranger damage. Curiosity, does this mean that it was doing less damage? Or was it doing too much damage? It was double dipping on Mastery. They didn't clarify. I need to see this because all damage reduced by 10% is very fair for Marksman. The spec is blasting. It's blasting very hard. It was doing very, very good. Question, was this overdoing damage or underdoing damage? Because if it was, we'll see what based on tuning here. All damage reduced by 3%. Actually, even after the last Beastmastery nerfs, it was still pumping on PTR. I don't know if the values weren't input right or what, but Beastmaster was still doing top damage in almost every key that I did yesterday. So fair nerfs, 3%. Still going to be a good spec. I know that they keep nerfing these, but both of these are still in a fine spot. Don't worry. Preservation. All right. I might be uniquely qualified to talk about this because I'm one of literally 5 preservation evokers that still play the game in Mythic Plus. No, I'm just kidding. There are a few more of us. I think there's at least 9. Okay, temporal anomaly increased by... This is actually just a solid change. And what's interesting is that this is a pretty noticeable amount. It's not a crazy change. It's just a small buff. It's like a quality of life increase for Prez. Not bad. I'll take it. Kind of wanted a little bit more, but it's going to be a little bit noticeable, I think. This is actually... This is like maybe a key level of damage, maybe not, but it's something. It's something. At the very least, they gave Prez something, and this is the right way to buff Prez and keys, so I'm glad about that. Okay, because they're right about this developer note. Scale Commander, right? I'm curious. I have no idea what this fixes. I have no idea how many pyres they were casting. The 25% increase, who knows? But Dev needs a lot more. Dev needs a lot of buffs, not nerfs, okay? I don't know exactly what this means for Devastation. I do know what this means for Flame Shaper, Prez Evoker. The reason this got nerfed is because it was literally degenerate gameplay on PTR, and it was doing a lot, okay? Now, this was interesting because this was not snapshotting, I believe, causing Dream Breath to lose any snapshotting healing. There's no shot that they fix this now. This has been a thing for Flame Shaper since its inception. And if this is worded correctly, then Flame Shaper just lost a ton of healing in raid. Not just their tier set, which was degenerate gameplay and overperforming, but this you would do crazy things to buff that Dream Breath with tempo charged with the season 1 tier set, as well as the fact that you wanted to have a max power Dream Breath to consume with Flame. I am very interested in seeing if this is actually do they really just fix a snapshot from it? You guys don't care about Preservation of Evoker. Nobody does. I'll move on. But basically, they might have just been actually nerfed in raid. This does not affect them in keys whatsoever. This is a pure raid nerf. Okay. Feral Druid, Saber Jaws, bonus. This is fair. Feral Druid in PTR is currently using a bugged two-piece interaction. So if you see a Feral Druid overperforming in PTR, it's because they're weirdly doing the opposite of what they should be doing, which is pretending their spec is bad. The actual way Feral Druid is playing, it's a little bit mid. So fair buff. I don't actually know if Feral Druids are 100% even playing this talent, which is interesting, but they probably will now because that's a fair bit of damage on Ferocious Bite. Balanced Druid, this is a big nerf. This is like, Balanced Druid is now Riss in Peace. This is actually insane. This is insane. This is a very, very large nerf. Keeper of the Grove is probably dead in keys. They nuked this. This is what happens when you overperform on PTR early on. When you're doing something like what Balanced Druid was doing, they absolutely gutted this. Guardian Druid, would you like to know how much of a DPS increase this is? Somewhere between 1 and maybe 2% in AoE. Yay. Guardian Druids, we got buffed. Congratulations, we're saved. We now have 1% more damage. Man, they could buff this. Let me put this in perspective. After they fixed this set and they fixed the interaction, which was actually making it good, this value could be like borderline 1,600%. And it would be like, oh, that's a buff. And we would not be the meta tank. Like Guardian Druid, this value could be 10 times this amount. And it would be like, cool, Guardian Druid does a little bit of damage now. Still not as much as other tanks. This is ridiculous and sad. This actually is just like we shed a tear because they did technically look at Guardian. This is nothing. This does not change anything. I know it's exciting to see a Guardian Druid buff, but this could be so much higher and it still wouldn't really do that much. So, unfortunate. Okay, Unholy. These are the interesting ones. This, I don't know if this is enough. I still think that Frost is going to be very good. I think that 12% is a modest amount to nerf this by, considering they actually buff here. There were some no breath builds being played, so I wonder if this is just to make sure that you play Breath of Sindragosa. Curiosity. Sand Lane for Blood DK. I was playing Deathbringer on every single thing. I was not playing Sand Lane whatsoever when I was playing my Blood DK. This is a fair buff to it though. This is actually a fair buff to it. Still don't know if you actually played or not, because that's a fair nerf, right? This is a nerf to the mastery value. This is a buff to the damage. I don't know how this math actually works out. We'll see. Unholy DK getting buffed is interesting. Unholy, I played with 2, and they were still top damage, give or take. Unholy was actually doing pretty good. So, good time to be a DPS DK, I suppose. All right, this was like the biggest change they've made so far. They took some big swings at actual underperforming specs. The Rep Pally buffs, the Warlock buffs, the Rogue buffs, the Warrior buffs, they're all interesting. And I think that it does change the meta. When I make the new updated tier list in a few days after some more PTR testing, things will change. Like this is actual changes. This will shift the meta, whereas before they were doing like a little bit here, a little bit there, that tier set there. It's like, okay, whoa, a second. We're starting to develop into the actual season notes now. So I assume we get one more round of tuning, but I had to cover this because Very interesting. I'm super excited to test all this out. Thanks for watching, and I will be back doing the updated tier list in a few days. So stick around for that. Okay, bye-bye.